All right, welcome everyone to Wednesday of National Distance Learning Week. This is our final session of today, but we will have some more tomorrow and one on Friday. I welcome you to this session. I'll be your moderator today. I just have a couple housekeeping items. We just ask that you keep your mics muted as the session's being recorded for background noise. But by all means, if you have a question, you can type that in the chat, or we will also have time for Q&A at the end. We'd also love for you to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you are from and what it is that you do. So I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker today. This is Dan Barrancotta, and this is Dan's second presentation this week. Dan is an instructional designer at SUNY Genesee Community College, and he also works as an adjunct instructor at GCC, Niagara University, and Bryant and Stratton College online, teaching classes in education, computer skills, and computer programming. So Dan, thanks again for being with us and sharing some more about Brightspace.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and thanks to everybody for joining today. I'll go ahead and get started. And the crux of this is going to be to just kind of run through a nice way to review a Brightspace course before implementation, whether you happen to be an instructional designer or an instructor. And this is going to be some things that we found based on our experiences with Brightspace. We're part of cohort 1 at SUNY Genesee Community College, and we jumped in the summer. And with our summer session, we moved all of our courses from Blackboard to Brightspace. And in the fall, we've continued that. So all of our courses are now in Brightspace. And that's, as any migration goes, you hit a few hiccups along the way, and you certainly learn some things as you go. But overall, I think things have gone relatively smoothly for us, and we've transitioned well and been successful in doing that. But in that process, through the summer and into the fall, we learned quite a bit about what that migration looked like and what the course sort of transition and rollover from Blackboard to Brightspace especially looked like. Many of you are likely have courses created or made some in a different LMS and want to use those, and as you should, and I'm sure a lot of time was spent on those. And as things moved over to Brightspace, not everything always comes the way we might expect it to, or there's some variation in things. So based on the things that we saw in the summer and earlier in the fall, we put this together to go through our courses before the winter and the spring semester. So we've tried to go through and take a look at each one of the instructors on campus and just do a quick review, just to make sure that the courses are sort of ready for instruction in the Brightspace LMS and taking advantage of some of the things that Brightspace does have to offer. What we've sort of came up with is an abbreviated version that's consistent with the Oscar rubric. Obviously, the Oscar rubric is a little bit more extensive than what we're going to be talking about today. It's a great rubric. It's awesome for course reviews, for new courses before they get started, for existing courses as they're running. But just with the way the migration went, in staffing and timeline, there wasn't enough time to go through and do a full Oscar rubric review on all these courses. But we wanted to keep really the main goals of that Oscar rubric in line with what we were going to look at. And that's, we want to ensure that it's a learner-centered and well-designed course. And we want to use this review process as a professional development exercise to help guide faculty. So this isn't so much as trying to point out what someone's doing right or wrong, or, to give a specific score, you got an A or a B. This is how can we make sure that these courses are sort of up to the standards that we'd like to see, and that they're behaving as expected within Brightspace and ready to go. So each of these items come in some form or fashion, directly or indirectly, from the Oscar rubric, and follow those guides and goals as well. The 10 things that we're going to talk about today and that we looked at are things that we sort of narrowed down to reach these 10. Some of this has to do with the way we changed some certain aspects of our courses and the way things were laid out was we transitioned from Blackboard to Brightspace. And ultimately, we wanted to get it to a point where we could really focus in on making sure that a course was ready to go and could get started in Brightspace, and that the main things were there in order for that course to be successful. It is a work in progress. Every course, I think, should be a living course in the sense that we continue to update it and work on it as we go. And, you know, we have the chance to make things better each and every day and each opportunity that we teach a course. So we're always encouraging faculty and instructors to do that as well. But these were the 10 things that we really wanted to draw immediate focus to make sure they were sort of taken care of and done in the way that we're looking to see it. So what I'll do is go through each one of these 10 and sort of discuss it and then provide you with an example from one of my classes. So we wanted to make sure that there was some type of clear start here module or an equivalent title. So some people it's welcome start here, some it's just start here, whatever maybe an instructor prefers is okay. But the idea being this is going to be the jumping off point for the course. What is it that in a face-to-face class that you would cover on the first day of your class? When students walk into a class, they need to know what's going to go on, that they're in the right spot, and the different materials and resources that they'll need to be successful. So we put that, we'd like to see all of that here in the Start Here module. And some of the focus on the things that we're looking for are contact information for an instructor, any important course information, things like books that maybe need to be purchased or materials, and a brief sort of overview of navigation and how to get through a course and the things that we're going to be looking for. So just an example of that is going to be right here. So this is an example for our welcome start here. Using banner images is a great way to sort of brighten up your course as well and provide some direction to students and help make it a more inclusive environment as well. So I encourage you to always use images and banner images wherever possible and practical. But what students are going to get in here and what we're looking for and what we wanted to see is I'll just sort of run through this module quickly with you, is a welcome message so students understand what we're going to be talking about. If possible, I think it's a nice idea to include a welcome video to introduce yourself. But we really wanted to make sure that instructor information was here. So phone number, Zoom information, email, best way for students to get a hold of you and contact you, and what they can expect in terms of turnaround time and a feedback schedule. Other important things that are included here, and much of this comes from some of the SUNY templates that were put out and shared with campuses, and you should be able to have access to those as well. But including course learning outcomes, course descriptions, the modality, credit hours, and any prerequisites or other important information right here, right off the bat, you know, basic things that we'd be going over again that first day of class. And then just some information on the things that students need to do moving forward. Some information on meeting yourself as an instructor, and we'll get into this a little bit more as part of our 10 items, but it's a nice idea to, again, have some information, contact information, office hours, all this sort of thing to sort of just, again, welcome your students to the course and let them know who you are and how to get a hold of you. Any important information for students as well. This is a document that just sort of shows the expectations for online learning students and the things that they need to be able to do and how things are going to run. This is a generic document to our campus, and this is included here. And some information on course navigation. So how to use Brightspace is here, but also how is your course specifically set up? And for online courses, I think it's especially important that we do that so students understand what to expect each and every week or unit, however you set that up. But here, just to let students know right away that we're organizing things into modules, and each module will be a week-to-week approach where they start on Sunday at 12:01 and end the following Saturday at 11:59. So students can have that expectation of when work becomes available to them and when they need to get things done along the way. We also wanted to make sure that right off the bat, students have access to their syllabus, their syllabi in a separate module as well. So the reason we want this to be in a separate place or a separate module is, again, so it's just easy to locate and find throughout the course, and students can refer back to that. And within this module, we want our instructors to be inserting the syllabus and uploading it as a file. So what this does is really helps us take advantage of some of the accessibility features in Brightspace and some of the navigation features of Brightspace. So we're looking for this to be in as a Word document directly in Brightspace. And the reason for that is when it's in as a Word document and it's uploaded as a file, it works really well with the screen readers and all of the accessibility features. PDFs don't work quite as well as the Word documents, so that's why we're recommending that. And what that looks like here is, again, if we go back to our course and say we go to our homepage, this separate standalone module, syllabus and course schedule students can go into. And from here, the syllabus is in here, as we can see, as a Word document. So students, when they click on the syllabus, when we put it in here as a Word document, and we upload it as a file, it's right here. And I love how Brightspace, when you put and upload files, and you can do this with PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, it puts the file in the document right in here where students can scroll through and see the document without having to download anything or click through an extra attachment or process. So this really sort of streamlines the course and puts things right in here. But students are able to download and print as well. And they have access to the alternative formats, printing and downloading here again at the bottom, which is a really nice feature. But I think this helps students rather than having to click and download another attachment. It's right in here as a document. And to put that in here in this way, from your content area, you can go to this upload create, and you would just choose upload files. So when we choose to upload a file, that will allow us to put that document directly in as I just displayed. And as I mentioned, this makes use of those accessibility features and helps out as well. All syllabus information at GCC, we have a policy and procedure in place for the different information that needs to be required in that. So we wanted to make sure that those things are in the syllabus, but we also created on our campus a widget that's in every course that includes certain things. So many of those same policies, accessibility information, plagiarism, cheating, netiquette, those types of things are included already in every course in a support widget that we created. So many of our Blackboard courses had those as standalone items in Blackboard, and faculty and instructors are able to remove those now because they're included in their course already. I mentioned as I was going through that Welcome Start Here module, we have that module. We want to make sure it's clear how students can get a hold of instructors and faculty in the course in multiple places. That should be in the syllabus and also in that Welcome Start Here area. And just in terms of creating an inclusive environment and inclusive design in our courses, we want to make sure that we're aware and cognizant of our different types of learners. We have some students that may be primarily on campus, primarily online. We have adult learners. We have sometimes students on our campus that are high school age students taking college credit courses, international students. So, office hours and contact, the more different options that we provide, the more inclusive we can be. So it's not just in your office physically on campus or just in Zoom, providing phone, being available through email at different times as well. So it's not just being available from 2 to 3 in the afternoon might be convenient for your schedule, but for somebody that's studying, on the other side of the globe or the country, that might not fit, or somebody that's working full time and trying to take your course may not be able to meet you then. So setting up appointments and having different availability is another great best practice to keep in mind as well. I mentioned this as I was going through that Welcome Start Here module, but we want to make sure that our instructor information is there as well, and that we're including, specific information to us. This helps, again, create that and foster an inclusive environment, and really helps to put a person behind the name and behind the screen. I think in our online classes, sometimes students can feel a little bit lost or disconnected. And if we can set the tone right off the bat in a course, and include as much information as possible to sort of humanize ourselves and let students know that we're here to help them and that we're a person and able to assist them. I think that really helps with student retention and success rates as well. We want to make sure that we're always explaining students how to get around and use the course. So intuitive or clearly explained course navigation. This is new to students as well. Some have never used an LMS. Some are transitioning along with you from the previous LMS into Brightspace. So there's a little bit of a learning curve for everyone. And we just want to make sure we're providing students with resources to be successful and understand how to work Brightspace and also how to work and navigate through your course. So as I mentioned, I included right in that course navigation area, there's information on using Brightspace, but also information so students can understand the layout of your course. Is it week to week? Is it month to month? Is it at your own pace? How do you sort of set up your navigation and set up your course structure in explaining that to students in a way that they know what to expect throughout the course? I don't think there's necessarily a way that you have to do that, but I would encourage you to always try to be consistent so that students know, on Wednesdays, I have to have my discussion post in. On Saturdays, I have to have my quiz completed. And I think that helps keep students on track in staying up to date and current with your course and with the information. And sometimes that can save a lot of extra headaches or questions on the instructor end as well, because students are more aware of exactly what's going on and what they need to do. The other thing that we wanted to make sure we were looking for are references to Blackboard. We have a lot of instructors that in their Blackboard courses would mention things, click on the folder to the left or go through it this way. You'll find this information under this tab, that sort of thing. All of that has changed when we go to Brightspace. So it's not that anything was done wrong in Blackboard, but we are in a new LMS and things are different in Brightspace. So it's important to make sure we're updating those references. If you're trying to point students to a specific area, it's likely that the directions and the verbiage for that is going to be different now. And we don't want to have those references creep up or pop up to Blackboard or whatever other LMS you may have been using before. So just make sure if that was in your course before, you're sort of working through that and removing those. Accessibility is, a huge topic and one that certainly we could spend hours and hours talking on. What we wanted to do here for this part of this migration and this course review process was highlight a few essential things. I mean, and all of accessibility is essential. So this isn't to say that, if you do this, you don't have to worry about other things. But this is what we decided to really draw attention on and focus our faculty and our instructors on. And we always want to, as part of accessibility, use a consistent font with an appropriate size. And there's many fonts that are accessible. So that's not to say that this is the only, if you don't use Lato 19, that your course isn't accessible. But the reason we're encouraging all of our instructors to use Lato 19 pixel font is because that's the default font within Brightspace. So if you create something new, if you're posting in the discussion board, if you're posting in content, it's going to automatically display to that Lato 19. So we're encouraging everybody to use that whenever possible. And we found that when courses rolled from Blackboard into Brightspace, much of the font structure got a little bit out of whack. So it's not that it was in Blackboard incorrectly, but sometimes there's formatting and things in the code, sort of behind the scenes and in the background that we're not aware of. And when it migrated over, that came out or that transitioned differently. So we saw a lot of really small font where it was very difficult to read and things, weren't accessible. So as we're going through and we're checking these courses, we need to update them anyways. Let's update to Lato in 19 pixel font. And again, I mentioned the reason for doing that is just if we were to say create a file here and just bring up a generic page, it's going to be Lato, and you'll notice that the Lato is the recommended font and there's a check mark, so it's easy to find and draw attention to. And the size here, the 19 pixel, will show default. So again, we can see the default icon, and that's going to be, as we just type in here, Lato 19. If we're to use a document template, which is something that we're encouraging others to do, and is part of this presentation that I'll talk about, but if we were to use that, this is going to come up with, by default, Lato, which again is the recommended font, and the 19 pixel. And the PX is for pixels. It equates to about a 14.25 point font. So 19 it's different scale than using like 19 in Microsoft Word. This equals about, like I said, about 14.25 point font. This provides a nice consistent font for students to read and see across your course. And as you create new things in Brightspace, that's what's going to be used. So I think it's a good idea to get in the habit of using that right off the bat. As I mentioned previously, the document templates, these are a great way to set consistency and a good fundamental approach to your course. They're helpful for so many different things, and chunking down information and working through that. And we're going to talk about that as we go. But we wanted to make sure whenever possible, we are in fact using those document templates. And when we go in and create a file, we have access to all of these document templates here. And for different parts of your course, there's many different things available. So, you know, if you're doing an intro or a conclusion, there's information here and items that you're likely to use in those pages, and it'll describe and show exactly the different types of things that you should think about including there. We want to make sure we're using those. One of the great things about Brightspace is all of these document templates come in and are 100% accessible. So all you need to do is just type and add your content over, and as long as you hold the same formatting, your materials will be accessible as well. We wanted to check for alternative text for images as well. So that's something that as images came over, then we ran into some circumstances where the alt text maybe didn't carry over the way it was anticipated to, or there were issues with the way images were displaying, or maybe weren't displaying or not there. So anything that you brought over from Blackboard, it's always good to just take a look and make sure everything is behaving as expected. And alt text was one of those things that you'll want to take a look at. And again, all of our course content we're looking for to be formatted accessibly so that it's available to all of our learners and learners with disabilities, whether they've disclosed those disabilities or not. When we looked at our courses too, again, not that anything was done incorrectly in Blackboard, but Blackboard really makes use of a folder structure and files that can really get you going down sort of a rabbit hole. And in Brightspace, it's set up more to be a module approach to navigation. So we wanted to pull things up and out and make sure we're making use of these modules within Brightspace so students have an easier way of getting through and navigating through content. And it really helps to organize the information to students. So we're grouping the different things that are needed for particular blocks of instruction in one area. And we're limiting the clicks for students. So it makes it simpler for students to navigate, find what they're looking for, and interact with the material. And when I say that, what we're looking at here is, again, just an example. The visual table of contents is on our course homepage, and each course might be a little different, but it seems to us the way Brightspace is sort of set up and created is to have this module approach. So if you click in any old module here, we'll try this one here for preparing a cover letter. Students would go in here, and everything that they need for that block of instruction in week 10, where focus is on preparing a cover letter, is right here, and it's all on one level, and it's all within that module. So you can see from within here, there's the welcome to the week. All these web pages are content pages where students are learning and interacting with information, resources are provided to them. And then from right within here as well, there's a discussion topic, an assignment, and if you had a quiz or anything else, that could all be in here as well. And what makes this great is, again, once students get in here, we're limiting the clicks. So if they start off in the welcome page, they can just move right through. And let's just say we're here on this navigation page and we're working through the content. and students work through and they're ready with this page, they can click next. And now they're right here to their discussion post so that they don't have to go back out and click anywhere else. Things just sort of come right to them within the module. And the same can be true of the assignment that's going to pop up next here. So everything's right there for the student to just, again, hold all that information in one spot. And we really like the way that it shows. We like the way that it shows right from the visual table of contents as well. It blocks things down into the particular week or unit. And then these gauges will show how much of a particular area a student has visited. It says completed. It doesn't mean or update if you had actually submitted an assignment or a discussion, but just viewed that. But this allows students to see where they've been and what they need to do, and they can click in here and pick up where they left off as well. And if you select these double arrows, it'll take you exactly to where you left off. Right to the page that you were last at when you were in that module previously. So just a quick question in the chat. I'm going to take a look here, work around for the layout and the module issue.
Yeah, I don't know if you need me to clarify that at all. But when you were showing us, like, I think one level above, it had a whole bunch of web pages, which are just one line of text. And then the assignment is like 2 screens worth. And then like,
right.
So there's that inconsistency, and I don't really have a great workaround for that.
Yeah, so it's sort of just the way things, when you see this, I exactly what you're saying here. So this is describing that this is a web page. Obviously in here, there's a ton of text. It's just not displaying. When we bring in a discussion topic, this is all here, and this is exactly as the discussion topic appears in the discussion. It's auto populating that, and it will show there for discussions, and same thing for assignments. So these get put in discussions and assignments through existing activities and adding discussions or assignments here. And when you do that, it'll bring that right there. A potential workaround that you can use is if you were to create a file, you would be creating that web page. So you'd have that web page distinction. And then from here, we can insert and link to our courses. So if you insert a quick link, you could go to discussions, and you could just choose any of your discussions here. And then that'll make a link directly to that discussion.
So then it's not like on that in the main thoroughfare where all that stuff was. They're all just
Right.
web pages. All right.
Yeah, what you'll see is if you go through now, students, if they click on what they'll see, I guess if we go back one more, just so you can see how it looks. The test web page, there's no information there, but when they get to this page, they can then click the link, and then that would take them to the specific discussion here.
All right. Thanks. I think that's kind of what we've been doing, but it's kind of crazy that like some things have no discussion or text, some have. I just want consistency, like either show all the text or none of the text.
I understand completely, and that is something that you'll find within Brightspace. I think as you work through and see different areas, there is oftentimes some variance depending on where you are and which tool you're using, how it might pop up for you, and it's not always exactly as you may have expected it to be.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one that I mentioned in those lines is with Blackboard, especially we used folders and files, and things could get a lot of clicks. And when that rolls over, it was putting those different file structures into submodules and making it a little bit more difficult to navigate. So what Brightspace makes use of that are really great are these different elements that can be used, and they allow you to chunk the information. So it can organize it better. I think it looks better, but it also is a little bit easier for students to interact with and work through the materials. And they can see it again, all at that top level of navigation. So for an example here, I'll pop in, and I have a picture here of this for different types of presentations. So each one of these presentations, rather than being a different file and requiring us to go to a different web page, can be a part of this one accordion. And you can click on an accordion and see the materials right there. So if I find that in this course quick. And this is, again, the accordion template is what we use here, but we can have information. So we've got text, and then we can work through this by chunking this information down, and students can click to learn more about specific topics. And it's a little less overwhelming to them. And you can, rather than having all of this text out and requiring students to really scroll through to get all the way down, this is all here so they can break it down and work through one thing at a time. We can add videos and embed videos right in here. You can make use of bullets and all the different font structures and things like that, but it really helps sort of keep things here. But this is all now on one page. So students get in here and everything that they need for presentations and learning about that is all on this one page, rather than breaking this down into 10 or 11 different pages where they're consistently clicking next and going to 10 or 11 small pages with a little bit of information. We can have all that here in these accordions now. So rather than a different page, it's a section of an accordion. And there's other tools that you can use. Tabs is another one that you can use that also helps do much the same thing. And then within the slides, there is some information and a link here to learn a little bit more about chunking down information for instructional design as well. We also wanted to look through and make sure that within Brightspace and within our courses, we've talked about navigation and helping students understand their expectations. We're looking for each module to have either a checklist, which is a tool that is specific to Brightspace and created that you can create in Brightspace, or within a module listing out exactly a list of the things that need to be completed in that block of instruction. So here on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see a module 1 checklist. And again, this is something that we create in Brightspace. And as it's created, students can go through and manually check off each thing. Unfortunately, if you submit an assignment and say the assignment for chapter 1 is on this checklist, it will not automatically check off. It is a manual process for students, but it does allow them to see in one spot a list of all the things that they need to do for that particular block of instruction. And alternatively, you could do it as part of an intro page or a conclusion page for that module, where you use a list of all the things that you want students to accomplish within that block of information as well. And these numbers here are part of the elements template that you can use, and they're also included in the module introduction template. So it's a nice way to sort of call out and bring extra attention to the things that need to be done within that specific block of instruction. So we want to see that each module has at least one or both of these to just clarify expectations for students and let them know exactly what they need to do while they're there.
Dan, this is Lisa from Niagara.
Yes.
I know that there's literally a session going on at the same time now about advanced like checklists and attendance, or it was this morning, maybe I missed it, but can you, where did you make the checklist at?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll jump in here.
If you don't mind, thank you.
A little bit different, but under course admin, you can make checklists right in here. And when you go to checklist, you just would create a new checklist. So you'll have to name that checklist. And then if you want to provide a description, you can. Encourage you to have this open in a new window so students can see that as they're working through other content, and we'll save it. And then once you're here, you can add a new item or category and then item. So we start with a category. We're going to save that. And then we can add a new item. And we'll just say quiz 1. And it'll be in the activities category. You can put in due dates here if you'd like. You can choose to display it in the calendar. If you created that quiz previously and have the due date on it, it may already be displaying in the calendar as well. So this would give it a second display in the calendar. So you might want to be aware of that. And then we'll save it. And now we've essentially created this checklist. So this activities has one thing here. And if we want to put this somewhere, we would go back to where we want it. So if I go back into content and just say we want to put it here, I would go to existing activities, and then I can choose checklist here. And this is the new one checklist.
Wow, thank you. Appreciate it.
It's always going to put it right at the bottom. We can reorder that as we want, but if students check in here, they could click on this and this is our view of what it will look like. So you can see, and then students, it would pop up in another window and they can check on and off or toggle through that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we also wanted an updated and functional gradebook, which is important and something that we found as courses migrated over from Blackboard. They really kind of came over and were a bit messy, to say the least. And that's because some instructors were using that same course for several semesters, and maybe they changed things as they went, or they had assignments or activities that they hid in Blackboard because they weren't using them anymore. Well, those all came over and displayed in Brightspace as well. So we noticed a lot of issues, things popping up that were no longer needed or not desired there. So it really required a bit of cleanup to get things sort of in line and functional so that the gradebook was behaving and functioning as anticipated. The nice thing Brightspace will provide you, though, is these notes within the grades area that'll let you know if something seems off to the system. So if things aren't adding up to 100, something's not verified, it'll let you know that you might want to check this out and see what's going on there. So when we were going through our reviews, we wanted to make sure there were none of these notes, and we wanted to make sure that the correct points or percentages were adding up. So this is an example here of a grade book with 2,000 points that's weighted, and it gets to 100%. So obviously, if we have a weighted grade book and your discussions are 30, the exams are 40%, and your assignments are 30, we want it to make sure it's adding up to 100 and not adding up to 80 or 100 or 20, which will throw off your grade calculations. And as I mentioned, there's some extra things that maybe came over during the migration. So those point totals could get added in too. So your syllabus might say there's 2,000 points for this course, but your grade book might be showing that there's 3,000 points based on other things that carried over. So we want to make sure we're deleting those out and getting rid of those extra issues so that students, aren't confused, so that your grades are calculating properly at the end of the term and can make sure that everything's behaving again as expected. It's also important to note here, and we could spend a whole day on the gradebook, so I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty of it, but just think about the visibility and display options and configurations of your settings in the gradebook so that students are seeing exactly what you want them to see. I did do a presentation for National Distance Learning Week Monday where I got into this a little bit, but you want to make sure that students are in fact seeing things from their end the way you want them to. So some of those settings or things that you might have had set up and were good to go on Blackboard may not carry over the way you anticipated, and you need to change some things around. So just be aware of that and look into that a little bit further as well. And then the last thing that we tried to look at was, again, sort of briefly, but getting in, are the CLOs up to date? Are they the appropriate learning objectives? And is there instruction and content within the course that helps prepare students for assessments of those CLOs? So, the CLOs are really the main thing of a course, right? That's what we're saying. A student that passes this course is able to do these things. When you earn a degree or a certificate or transfer credit, we're saying that you completed this. And what this is usually the CLOs. So we want to make sure that the courses are focused on that and use this as an opportunity to sort of on our end quickly look at it, but also draw attention to instructors to make sure that they're thinking about these things. And wherever I can sort of plug and kind of show or help instructors with that, I'm a big proponent of backward design and sort of beginning with the end in mind and that sort of thing. So those are some resources that I really encourage you to look at as you're preparing your course, or maybe trying to decide how you want to set your course up from a navigation standpoint, week to week or units, different things. Think about your ultimate goals at the end and where you're trying to get to and accomplish with your students, and work backwards from there is a great way to go about doing that. And what we did with each of these 10 items was rate them based on a traffic light, again, to keep this sort of as a low stakes assessment and not, in line with the types of things that the Oscar rubric stands for. It's can be a professional development opportunity. So things that we found that were red required immediate attention, and we reached out to instructors and addressed some of these things with them or on our own, or asked them to take care of it. But all those things needed to be addressed before we were going to put those courses on the spring schedule. Yellow areas are areas that need some work. These are things that, can be improved. Maybe some parts were okay, some parts were not exactly as expected. And these things are not quite as immediate, but important to address and update and just have a plan in place. And what we found was a lot more yellow than red. And we wanted this to, again, be a bit of a learning experience. So it was a good way to draw attention to faculty and instructors and let them know some of the things that they could improve on and how to go about doing that. And then green, obviously, good to go and for your course to run. And each instructor received one of these, and just a simple Excel sheet that had that score, and anything that had a yellow or a red area came with some brief note or explanation on how to address that and different things that they could do to, update that area and get that area into a green area to be ready to go for their course. I just want to thank Judy Littlejohn and Nancy Paros from our office for their assistance with these course reviews and putting this presentation together and helping to develop those 10 items as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have or show examples of things or anything that you might have for me, and I can help out.
Thank you, Dan. There is a request to show something in the chat from Jay. The example of a support widget, if you could.
So what we did was
a question,
created the support widget as a customized widget on our instance of Brightspace, and then we put that in to the homepage that displays on every course, and it's also on the main landing page. But this is where we put all of our support for technical, academic, personal things, course policies, accessibility things, but everything, and even access to our library. So this goes into every course to make sure these things are there. And anything that students might need help with, how to get information with Brightspace, our help desk, different academic things like the tutoring and learning center, some library resources for where they can get, information on frequently used topics or asked questions here. We have a personal area where we put in, where they can get information for counseling, scheduling, make appointments with their advisors, things like that. And then all of the relevant course policies are here: accessibility statement, plagiarism, things that much of these were individually placed in courses in Blackboard by instructors. And now we were able to put them automatically in all of these courses as well. And then, so if we add something, it gets to, yes. So the beauty of this is when we update this widget, it does get updated everywhere the widget is placed. It does take, it runs, I think it's every night at, I don't remember what time it is, maybe 10 p.m. I think SUNY runs it, but we can update the support widget in one spot, and then that will update it everywhere. So it's not, we're individually putting in a piece of content into a course and then asking instructors to keep it updated or having to, put in the right file each time. We're able to just edit this widget one time on our campus admin accounts, and it will update everywhere.
So that then eliminates it from everybody having to include that in their syllabus then, right?
Yeah, so yes and no. For us, we do have a policy that certain things like the plagiarism policy needs to be in your syllabus, and that policy is in place for faculty still, so they still have to have it right now. But ultimately, yes, this is going to be in every course, so they might adjust that policy so that plagiarism statement doesn't need to be in the syllabus. Any other
Thanks for
questions
that.
I can show? I
I also
appreciate
like that you kept it concise, Dan. So it's like, there's 10 things really, not to overwhelm people, right?
Exactly. And there's plenty of things that every instructor was, worried about trying to learn how to use Brightspace and figuring out where things were and how it migrated over and working through that. So we didn't want to overwhelm people. We really got into this, as I mentioned, in the fall after our summer pilot ran, and instructors were live teaching their fall courses. We worked through to review those while they were going on in preparation for the winter and the spring terms.
Yeah, exactly. And you did make mention of your other presentation. It was on Monday. And so I'm putting in the chat the link to sessions and recordings. So if anybody did want to go and see that, you can access that at the link there.
Very much.
Dan, may I ask one more question? The red light, green light, stoplight, the report that goes back to the faculty.
Yes.
So you did that for every course that
So
came over.
What we ended up doing was we went through just based on sort of staffing, and we did one course for each instructor. So somebody teaches 5 different courses. We just did it once in sort of assumed, and you can look in and see, but most things were relatively consistent across instructor, the way things migrated over, the way they had it set up, and we're using it.
I'm sure that was extremely helpful with faculty, just having to make a few changes and see what they needed to, do so that they could get more, green.
Absolutely. Yeah, it turned out to be, I think we bounced around a few different ideas of a rating scale, but I think this was the sort of the simplest. It's not a aggressive rating scale, or people, it's just everybody sort of understands the stoplight, and we wanted to see everybody getting to green, and again, kind of keep it as a little bit more of like as we talked about assessment types, it's a little more low stakes. There's not that you got a 100 or a 75 or a B or an F, that sort of thing.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate you sharing with us today, and for all of you who attended. As I mentioned, the slide link is in the chat. I'll give you a quick preview of tomorrow's sessions. Those highlights include teaching a high flex history course, leveraging Panopto to provide student feedback, and spicing up your Brightspace course. So we encourage you to explore these additional offerings from USDLA, and I hope to see you at another event this week. Take care, everyone.